So you were in Westminster Hall when the President of Ukraine addressed MPs. It must have been quite a moment.
It was. As soon as I heard President Zelenskyy was going to be coming to Westminster Hall, I kind of cancelled everything in my diary and went straight there. Westminster Hall is an incredibly historic place. There's been a hall there for 900 years. And over the centuries, some extraordinary historic things have happened there, from the trial of King Charles I. All kinds of things have happened in that place. More recently, great statesmen have addressed both houses of Parliament, people like Nelson Mandela and Barack Obama. And I think when people look back at President Zelenskyy's address today to both houses of Parliament and many other hundreds of people as well, they will look back on that as something that is similarly historic. A war leader, the leader of a nation whose very survival is being threatened by an aggressor, coming to speak to one of the oldest democracies in the world. We're doing everything we can to support them. I think it was quite a special moment that he came and spoke to us in that way. I think I'm certainly going to remember it for the rest of my life, and I suspect other people who were there will as well.
And I guess we don't know how the story of the Ukraine war ends. I mean, it was very clear, wasn't it? It was only President Zelensky's second visit out of Ukraine since the beginning of the war. He knew why he was here. He was here because he was asking for jets. Is he going to get them? Well,
President Zelenskyy has obviously asked the West for military support over the last year, and the United Kingdom has been leading Europe in providing that support. I mean, the Challenger tanks, the missiles, the air defence systems, £2.3 billion worth last year and the same this year, and now the jets. And I think the Prime Minister has said today that he has tasked our Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, with looking into how we can help with that request. Nothing is off the table. I take it from that there is no objection in principle, because otherwise he wouldn't have asked the Defence Secretary to go and look into this. There are obviously some questions around training, because the training to fly one of these jets can take a while.
Years, right? Yeah.
It can in ordinary times take years. That's right. But the fact that our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has asked the UK Defence Secretary to look into this, I think, is a pretty clear signal of intent.
See, I don't get it, right? Because I take how you read this, right? But I genuinely am a bit confused. I can't work out if he says he's going to look at this. He's asked Ben Wallace to have a look at it. I can't work out if that is kicking it into the long grass or if that means we are actually going to send jets. Can you clarify?
Well, I think it demonstrates serious intent. Right?
What does that mean? I'm not sure what that means.
I think clearly sending jets and working out the training that would go around those is not a straightforward exercise. Right? These are very complicated bits of equipment. As you said, ordinarily it takes 5 years to train to fly one of these pieces of kit. So it's not straightforward. And I think what the Prime Minister means is he wants the Defence Secretary to look at the practicalities of how that could be made to work. But the fact he's asked him to do that suggests to me that there's no, in principle, objection to doing it. It suggests to me that there is serious intent, but it's got to be worked through in a proper, thoughtful way.
Is there a genuine concern about what this means when it comes to the war and how Russia will see this? Because, the Russian ambassador to Berlin said about tanks that it was an extremely dangerous decision. It takes a conflict to a new level of confrontation. The Kremlin have come out to, condemn the idea of jets as well, according to Russian news agencies. Are we concerned about what it means? Could it mean an escalation?
The Russians have made these kind of comments previously. We are helping a sovereign, free, democratic country defend themselves from an unconscionable act of aggression, which has included deliberately targeting and murdering civilians. We are perfectly within our rights to do anything that we feel necessary to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. I personally see no, in principle, reason why that shouldn't include jets, to prevent women and children getting killed, which is happening as we speak. And I don't think we should allow comments by a regime like Putin's to deter us from doing that. We're supporting and helping a free, democratic nation defend themselves and defend civilians from a barbaric attack.
So does it raise our threat level?
Well, we've seen the Russians employ rhetoric in the past. We're obviously always very thoughtful about our own security, but I think there is no need for us to be apologetic or defensive about helping a free democratic nation defend itself from attack.
It's worth it, is the argument that you would give, that even if it does increase the threat level from Russia, it's worth it because of the democratic principle.
Well, I'm not sure I'm accepting the kind of premise of the question.
Because you think it may be rhetoric.
What I am saying is that this is a free democratic country, a European country, being brutally attacked. Civilians are being deliberately targeted, murdered by the Russian regime. And I think in those circumstances, we should do everything we can to help them defend themselves. And I think President Zelenskyy made an interesting point in his speech today. He talked about how he'd been to the cabinet war rooms in the past, sat in Churchill's chair, and he talked about how making sure Russia does not succeed in their murderous and illegal objectives will act as actually a deterrent to other aggressive countries that may think about doing this kind of thing, indeed to Russia itself. And actually by helping Ukraine in their fight for their own survival, we're actually making the whole world a safer place, because it means aggressive regimes like Putin just think twice or think 3 times, or perhaps don't do it at all when they look over their borders at neighbouring countries. So I think being firm and supporting Ukraine, actually viewed in the round, makes the world safer.
One other question on Ukraine. We've focused a lot on jets. I have to say, my ears pricked up when Rishi Sunak was talking about long-range missiles, saying that actually this is what he spent most of the time talking about, long-range missiles. Boris Johnson also called for them to be provided. Should they be?
Well, I think the Prime Minister himself, Rishi Sunak, was clear about the importance of doing that, and I think he's been actively discussing that with President Zelenskyy.
So is that going to happen?
Today?
Say that's going to happen.
Look, it's for the Prime Minister and Defence Secretary to make those kind of announcements. It's not for me, but it's been quite clear from his comments the Prime Minister was actively discussing that today. And again, it helps the Ukrainians defend themselves against this barbaric attack.
And potentially attack Russia as well.
Well, we're helping Ukraine defend themselves from this barbaric attack, and I think any sovereign nation has the right to do that, and I think we have a right. In fact, I think we have a moral duty. It's more than the right, we have a duty to help them defend themselves, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it makes the world a safer place.
Now, on a, I think many people would completely agree with the comments that you make about the importance of supporting Ukraine. One other issue that I'm quite keen to talk to you about is that we've seen the re-emergence, so we say, of your former boss, Liz Truss. You obviously served in her Treasury when she was Prime Minister. It made an appearance at PMQs too. I just want to listen to the SNP leader, Stephen Flynn, and you know what's coming.
Now, the former Prime Minister won't apologise for the damage that she has caused. So on behalf of the Tory party, will he apologise for her?
I mean, there is an argument that Rishi Sunak shouldn't be apologising because he didn't serve. He ran against Liz Truss. He described her ideas as fantasy economics. You obviously did serve in her cabinet. Would you like to apologise?
Well, I think Liz Truss actually did apologise at the time for the turmoil that occurred. But since Rishi Sunak came to become Prime Minister 3 or so months ago, the various market indices have basically returned to where they were before. So the currency, I remember, I may have even come on your show and you had some chart on the wall about the
I remember
currency.
this one. Yeah.
That's right. And the currency had gone from, I think it was 113 against the dollar, it went down. It's now actually up above where it was last time I checked a week or two ago, above where it was when she came to office. And the similar is true of bond yields. So that's reverted to normal. We've got GDP growth last year, 2022 in the UK, that was higher than any other G7 country. So I think, we can now look to the future. We've got a very low unemployment. In my lifetime, I'm 46, it's the lowest unemployment almost in my lifetime. Obviously challenges with cost of living that we need to face up to. But I think we're in a good position, good place.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out other economic indicators showing that, for example, we're still got the only G7 economy with a smaller economy than pre-pandemic. Just talking about mortgage rates, for example, which certainly haven't returned to normal. But I guess what I'm interested in, right, is you said there about how we've done different interviews at different times over the last few months, which we certainly have. You came in here to defend Liz Truss. You're now here defending Rishi Sunak, talking up his economic policies you did just then. I mean, that's pretty tough going, isn't it? Do you have whiplash?
Well, I did support Liz Truss, and I did support the idea of having lower taxes, clearly, but you've got to have. There are a couple of reasons why that wasn't accepted by the financial markets, and clearly the financial markets did reject the approach. But that was for a number of reasons. One was there weren't spending reductions to fund the tax cuts, and there wasn't OBR scoring. So there was a violent market reaction that we talked about at the time, and that's why a different approach was then needed. You have to deal with reality as you encounter it, and clearly the markets reacted very badly, and so that's why there was a change, and that's why Rishi came in and did what he did, which has, broadly speaking, worked. Those numbers have now reverted to where they were before. Mortgage rates have gone up across the world. Here in the UK, they've basically gone back pretty much to where they were in August or September before the mini budget. But there is still a lot more work to do across the Western world on the cost of living, inflation, and so on and so forth.
It's interesting you talking there about the market reaction and mentioning the OBR, because obviously Liz Truss did in her article in the Sunday Telegraph as well. She blamed a powerful economic establishment for some of the issues she faced. She also said the Office for Budget Responsibility, effectively the watchdog, they kind of mark the government's homework, if you like. She accused them of putting fiscal policy in a straitjacket and said she disagreed with their assessment. Do you think she's right on those things?
Look, I'm not going to offer a kind of running commentary on what Liz has been saying. I think what is clear is that the approach taken wasn't accepted by the markets. Part of that, I think, was the fact that there wasn't an OBR scoring. Now, you can debate the rights and wrongs of the OBR, but the sort of fact was the financial markets didn't like the way it was presented, and they reacted.
And you wouldn't put them as part of the kind of economic establishment then? You'd say that that's a reflection of the policy?
I think ultimately the problem was with the financial markets, right? And the financial markets didn't like the way the package was put together. You can debate the reasons for that, but they certainly didn't like it, and that's why a correction ended up getting made, and the correction has essentially worked.
Just finally, because you did mention how you liked the ideas of lower taxes, what is your position on lower taxes now? Would you like to see taxes come down?
Well, I think it's got to be done in a way that... Yes, I would. It needs to be done, though, in a way that is responsible, because we saw what happens if the market reacts badly. So I think, for that to happen, we need a certain amount of economic growth. I think the path we're set on will ultimately deliver that, but time will tell. We certainly had we got all these sort of headlines talking about the UK not doing well, but in 2021 we had record growth in the G7. 2022, last calendar year, we had record growth in the G7 again. So, and we've got very, very low unemployment indeed. We're about to see the minimum wage go up in a few weeks' time by, I think, around about 10%, which will help people, obviously, on lower incomes. So I hope we do get circumstances where we can reduce taxes, but it's got to be done in a way, obviously, that is responsible and doesn't cause a negative market reaction.
OK, thank you very much.
Because I've got the scars of the last one.